Good evening, ladies and gentlemen that are joining us remotely for the school board meeting. I want to let you know that we will be delayed by about 10 more minutes. There's been an accident and we're still waiting on a couple people to get here physically. So as soon as everyone's in place, we will begin the meeting. So thank you for your patience.
start the meeting. At this time, we're going to open the meeting in a moment of silence, and then we will proceed with the meeting. This time, we will go to public comments.
Yes.
Approval of the agenda. Well, this will go ahead and start with the approval
Right.
of the agenda. Keep in mind that approval of the agenda means the consent agenda also. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as published, along with the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This time, we will be ready for the public comment session, and we did try to accommodate people who did not make it here tonight to public comments by posting a form on the website so that people could send their information in ahead of time. And Dr. Cox is going to read the statements that he has received. I think maybe a total of about 4 who were able to make comments that they wanted to talk about tonight. So at this time, Dr. Cox, public comments.
Okay, would you like me to read the comments first or invite the people that are here in person?
Let's do the ones who are here in person first.
Okay, so we're ready for the first speaker.
Is that the lady at Texas?
Yes, the first speaker is Miss Middlestead. Who? Miss Middlestead?
I sent her a text.
Okay.
She asked me to text her.
Mr. Jones, in the interest of time, while she's waiting, I could go ahead and read if you'd like. Okay, so as Mr. Jones said, we did provide an online opportunity for people to make comments, and we received 4. So I will read the comments as...
I just got a text that the people in the, at home were having trouble hearing. We would please check and see if everything is going through correctly. Is it me?
First of all, I want to thank you guys for allowing public comment tonight. I'm hearing a lot of this. So basically, the main thing I want to say is please continue with your plan to reopen school on the 19th. Excuse me. Please allow for in-person learning. Our teachers are essential. Our children are essential. Their education is vital. Their education is essential. Something has to be done. Something has to be figured out. The majority of our teachers are doing an amazing job. Some of them are going above and beyond, but it still doesn't help the children that need to be in person. Yes, there are teachers that do want to teach in person school for various reasons, and that is their personal choice. I am not judging them for their decisions, but at the same time, I'm an essential healthcare worker. I don't have a choice. I have to go to work. My job is vital. My job is essential. I have to go. Our teachers have a huge burden on them because of all of this, and they need help, but please hear our pleas as well. The children need help, the parents need help, the teachers need help. The vast majority of our parents and students want to be in school, they need to be in school. If there are parents that don't have their kids in school, they have options. They have BOE, they have homeschooling. For the rest of us parents that want our kids in school, we don't have an option. We have no choices, we have no options. Sorry, excuse me, it was cold outside. There are many kids, once again, whose grades have started to drop under the virtual. There are many kids that are unable to learn online properly or even focus. One thing I want to address is internet access. There are still so many families without internet access to do where they live. These people do not have cell service, so hotspots don't work for them. Internet doesn't even go to a lot of the places that these kids are. Some of my daughter's friends and some of my friends' children, they're inviting people to their house so these kids can get online to learn. These people are creating their own little homeschool, so these kids have internet access. But that doesn't work for everybody. The waiting list for the mental health appointments in all of the area has grown from 6 to 9 months to 8 months to a year. The psych ward here in Johnson City is full. There's a waiting list. The suicide prevention calls us up. I'm in a support group for parents and kids and stuff who are trying to make this work virtually. I want to read you some of the comments that have been sent to me. Yeah. I have 3 kids and I work full time. There's no one at home to make sure my kids are logging in. Once they're logged in, there's no one to make sure they're doing what they need. My kids are in middle school and high school. I'm mom of 3. I feel like I have to choose between my kids' education and putting food on the table. I have no one to assist with the day-to-day learning. I work full time. That's a single mom. My child has an IEP plan, but it's not available at home. We can't follow it. My child is suffering. It goes on and on. But the last thing I want to tell you is these are the comments that the students are making. These are what kids are telling parents. I'm losing different aspects of scholarships due to virtual and not being able to maintain the requirements. Now the rest of this, I want you to listen carefully. I feel hopeless. I used to be a straight A student, but now I'm barely passing some of my classes because I'm unable to learn virtual. I feel out of control. I am depressed. I can't continue to do virtual learning. My mental health is suffering. I am spiraling. I feel like I'm in prison with virtual learning. I would rather drop out of school than to continue this again. Now, this is the 2 things I want you to hear me. I've always suffered from depression. It is worse now. I have thought about killing myself. Present that we have children, a middle school child who has thought about killing themselves, more than one. I can't do this for months on end like I did before. I never thought that I could do this again. I never thought I would be the kind of kid that thought about ending my life, but I have. Depression is real. They say that this is going to go on through this year into next year. Do we need to continue to do this to our children? We don't. We need to find a way. We need to find a way to help our teachers. We need to find a way to help our students. And we need to find a way to do something. The last thing I just want to say is there's a lot of people out there that can't afford nannies or tutors or all these things. Think about the demographics of Sullivan County. That's what I want you to think about. You guys that sit here, you represent us. You represent our kids. Some of you don't even have kids in the Sullivan County school system. You don't represent Bristol City or Kingsport City. You represent us. If you don't want to represent us, please step down. Let a board member take your spot that wants to truly represent us. Represent our children. Do what is right by our children. Please make an option for our kids to go back in person for those that want it. Thank you.
This time, Dr. Cox, if you'll...
Yes, we're ready for speaker number 2. I can see Mr. Ratliff is here. It's Mrs. Stanley.
While we're waiting, if you go ahead and read
Yes.
some of the other
I'll
comments.
go ahead and read. There's a rather short comment here. Mr. Ratliff, we're ready for speaker number 2. This is a comment that came in writing from a constituent, Deborah Stewart, and she writes, as a member of the staff and parent of a student who will be affected, I ask the board finds in the best interest of students to vote to allow Blountville Elementary to remain intact after moving to Holston. Jessica Hall writes, my daughter is in the 2nd grade and she gets on the bus at 7:15 and gets home at 3:45. If she has to go to Holston, can you imagine when she would have to go to school and get home? If you drive from my house to Holston right now, that's 20 minutes, and that's without stops. It would probably be 40 minutes with stops. That's too long to be on the bus. Also, my youngest daughter will be starting kindergarten, so that will be even longer for her. I wish I could just take them, but I'm a working parent. I also love Blountville. I feel like in the middle of everything, so you could get to my child fast if need be. Another point I have is that I don't want my child to have to make more changes as they have suffered so much already. Okay. And I see Mrs. Stanley is here.
We're still getting comments that the people in the community cannot hear, that they're getting a lot of feedback.
You get some people saying that you're loud.
Right, but they said they can't hear the others either. That Ms. Stanley?
Thank you. My name's Angie Stanley. I'm a Sullivan County Commissioner. I live at 512 T-Berry Circle, Kingsport. I am here today to address the name change of the middle schools, of naming them with the mascot and the colors. I know that we're all in a lot of stressful times right now for the board, the county as a whole, and the children, the teachers, and the staff. And I think the least that we could do is not sit here and change things in our community right now. There's still a lot of questions that I guess needs to be answered. During the process of picking the name of these schools, was the questions looked at the positive accomplishments and stuff that everybody had done in each of these districts? The alumni contributions, some business contributions. I know that the high school and the middle school in the South Zone, we have a lot of parent involvement and a lot of business involvements. We have a lot of donations from a lot of the businesses there, and that's how we run our sports. I know football carries a lot of the money through the year from the football games and stuff. I feel like that changing the names of these middle schools will not have positive ramifications. How much money is it going to cost to change the name of these schools? How much money will it take out of the taxpayer's pocket? Because that's who's going to be paying for this. I feel like right now is a time that we need to be preserving our communities. We have competition coming in to the South Zone, and I feel like that a lot of the people from this area might end up turning to go to this new school here in 2 to 3 years whenever it opens up. And I don't want that to happen. I want our communities to stay intact. That's for North and for South and for Central. I feel like that all 3 of our zones should be treated equal. We should be treated just like the East Zone did. And I feel like that going in and changing the names of these middle schools will really hurt our community and the support that we will get for this school. If you go in and you change a name, I understand the mascot and colors. I truly understand that. But I do not think that changing the name is what we need to be doing right now. I feel like it will be a negative impact. So I'm hoping that you all, before you all vote, that you all will add South Middle School to that list. And for the mascot, name it Raiders. Use the colors blue, black for the Raiders, and gray. That right there combines 2 communities together. North Zone has went through a lot. They've lost every single school that they've got but one. we're losing 3 in my zone. And it's just not fair to sit here and take everything away from these communities, especially when all of the businesses and stuff. I'm a business owner, and I know how much I contribute to these schools around here. I contribute to Central, and I contribute to South. And, you know, it's not fair to not treat every zone the same. So I'm asking that you all, please remember that whenever y'all go vote. And thank you all for all that you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Stanley. Dr. Cox, if you'll finish with...
And I have 2 more comments to read that came in via the internet. The next one is from Christy Gregory. I'm very disturbed and concerned about the prospect of closing Blountville Elementary School next year. Not only will it be traumatic for our children who have been through a great deal of difficulty this year with COVID restrictions, hospitalization, and loss of family members due to COVID, loss of income for some families, etc., but I believe it is bad for Blountville as a community. It would create a hardship for our family to take our kids to Holston, and I can't help but think it would be the same for others. If this is the only possible course of action, could it not wait 1 more year to allow our kids some semblance of a normal school year? Also, I feel like this has not been adequately presented to our community. It feels like perhaps this is being pushed through at a time when many families are distracted by other stresses so as to avoid their input. It feels like poor timing at best and convening at worst. That's what it says. And one final one, this is on a different topic. This is pertaining to operating schedule, and this comment is from June Atkins. I feel that school should stay virtual until the virus is under control, and right now it just seems to keep spreading in our schools. I know it's hard, but I'd rather for my grandkids and everyone else's kids to be safe. I love all kids, and we as adults need to think about our kids, no matter the consequences. The truancy thing is not always right either. There's a lot of kids who have been marked absent when they have done their work and turned it in. If Google Meets are mandatory, then teachers should be there on time. And that concludes the comments. Again, we provided an opportunity for people who wanted to make comments to the board who didn't want to come in person. And so, Mr. Jones, that concludes the public comment section of the meeting.
At this time, I'm going to ask you, Dr. Cox, to move new business naming the schools up above the others because we have our young people out here in the foyer,
Yes, sir.
if you don't mind doing that.
Yes, okay, so for everyone's information, we will be changing the agenda just a little bit. We're going to jump to new business, and then we'll come back to communications to the board after this. And the first item under new business is naming the schools for 2021-2022. And let me just start by giving just a little bit of background, then we'll get right to the presentations for this evening. So according to School Board Policy 3-210, naming schools and facilities, the policy language is as follows. Facilities of the school system shall be named through board action. When a new school is to be named, the director of schools or designee will seek input from patrons of the school and community. So in fulfillment of this policy, we did ask our principals to put together committees that consisted of parents, a staff member, and students from each of the schools that would feed into this. And we did talk about that a little bit. The process that was used was facilitated by Mrs. Rafalowski, who continues to serve as a consultant on our projects. And she did facilitate those meetings in the same manner as the naming committees for both the West Ridge project and for the Sullivan East Middle Schools through a democratic process. And so committee members listed the options for the names of the schools, for the color combinations, and for the mascots. And used that process to formulate a recommendation that went to public survey. And then, once the committee finalized the information for the surveys were open for public comment, and then the results were collected and shared with the committees. The committees then voted to bring their recommendation to you this evening. So tonight, we are privileged to hear from the committee, and our first speaker tonight is Emmy Pierce, who is a student at Innovation Academy, and Emmy served as a committee member for the naming of the building that we're actually in for the Central Campus School that will host the combined current populations of Holston Middle School and Blountville Middle School. So, Emmy, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I want to thank you for coming here tonight, and thank you and all of the committee members for your dedicated service and for all of your hard work that brings us to this point. So, without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Miss Emmy Pierce.
Good evening, board members and Director Cox. My name is Emmy Pierce. I am a student at Innovation Academy. I served on the Central Area Branding Committee for the new middle school, which will be located at our current Sullivan Central High School. It is my honor to share the recommendation from the Branding Committee with you this evening. First, I would like to share a little bit about our committee and our work. Our committee was made up of 17 members, 7 parents, 7 teachers, and 3 students. We began meeting in early November with the goal of having our work completed in order to present our recommendation to you this evening. Our task of compiling options and surveying the community is now complete. Our recommendation is as follows. Each one of you has a graph showing the allocation of votes for the name, mascot, and colors of the new middle school. After reviewing 2,454 votes, our committee voted unanimously to recommend the favorite in each category from the survey. Tonight, I submit to you to name the new middle school Sullivan Central Middle School, to name our mascot Cougars, and to name our colors orange, charcoal gray, and white. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this evening.
And thank you, Emmy. So, board members, would you like to make any comments to Emmy or ask her any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, thank you. All right, and next, I'd like to invite 2 of our students who represented the committee that where the school will be located at the current South High School. Again, they are 2 of our students who are making that presentation this evening. And so Molly Redmond, who is a student at North Middle School, and Cash Taylor, who is a student at Colonial Heights Middle School. So I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Molly Redmond and Cash Taylor, who will deliver the recommendations from the committee for the campus at the current Sullivan South High School.
Okay, so, good evening, Board and Director Cox. My name is Molly Redmond. I am a student at Sullivan North Middle School and most recently served on the South Area Branding Committee for the new middle school, which is to be located at our current Sullivan South High School.
And my name is Cash Taylor. I currently attend Colonial Heights Middle School, and I too just served on the South Area Branding Committee for our new middle school.
First, I would like to share a little about our committee and our work. Our committee was made up of 17 members, 7 parents, 7 teachers, and 3 students. We began meeting in early November with the goal of having our work completed in order to present our recommendation to you this evening. Our task to compiling options, our surveying the community is now complete, and our recommendation is as follows.
Each one of you should have a graph showing the allocation of votes for the name, mascot, and colors for the new middle school. After review of 2,733 votes, our committee voted anonymously to recommend the favorite from the survey in each category.
Tonight, I submit to you to name our new middle school, Sullivan Heights Middle School, the mascot Huskies, and the colors Columbia Blue, Charcoal Gray, and White. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, members of the board, this evening, I'm very pleased to recommend to you these names and thank the committee for their work, their dedication to this process. So it is my recommendation to you to accept these recommendations and to name the middle schools, select the mascots, and the color combinations for these schools as recommended by the committees that you just heard from our students.
Let's break these down separately since they were presented separately. So I will entertain a motion to name Central first, and then we'll vote on that. Then we will go to South. So at this time, the floor is open for a motion. He made the recommendation to accept the committee's recommendation, but we have to have a motion to actually name the schools.
I make the motion.
You make a motion to name Central, the
Yes.
Central Middle School with Cougars and the colors that they presented. Do I have a second on that?
A second.
Have a motion by Dr. Rouse, a second by Mr. Gilmore. Floor is open for discussion. If not, at this time, we will do roll call. And I'm not sure.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Rouse,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The name of the new middle school at Central is the Central Middle School, and it remains Cougars. This time, the floor is open for a motion concerning the name in the middle school that's housed at South High School, so I'll entertain a motion.
I make the motion.
Dr. Rouse makes the motion to name South, to name it Sullivan Heights Middle School with the mascot, the Huskies. Do I have a second on that? I will second for Mr. Gilmore, so we have a motion and a second to name Sullivan Heights Middle School with the mascot Huskies. Floor is open for discussion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Iverson?
I'm not sure if you can hear me or not, so I'm going to try to speak up on this, but I would like to make a motion to table this for 1 month, and during that time, add Sullivan South Middle School to the option of, which was selected was Sullivan Heights Middle School, and allow a mascot choices of Raiders and Blue Raiders, which was subject to Mr. Robinson's request, to the Huskies, and rerun the survey and vote on it next month at our next meeting.
You have a motion from Mr. Iverson to actually table this motion, so I need a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Robinson.
No? Okay. I'd like to speak on that if whenever it's okay with you, sir.
Okay.
Before we vote? Okay.
Yes, floor is open for discussion.
Okay. I really think that the committee did a great job. I really appreciate the work that the committee did. I know that I'm getting several calls and several texts and lots of input from the community that they feel like Sullivan South Middle School should have been something that they were allowed to vote on. I do understand, and I've actually talked to Ms. Rafalowski, and I understand in the process they went through, and I know they were dedicated to their job, and I completely understand that Sullivan South Middle School was an option for that group, and that they actually voted it down, and I understand that completely, and I appreciate the work that they did, and I don't want anyone thinking that I'm a smack in the face of them. If it is, I apologize, because that is absolutely not the intent. The South community is the only one that didn't have, as a group, the ability to vote for their school name to remain the same. Sullivan Central did, Sullivan East did, Sullivan South Middle School was the only one the community didn't have a chance to say anything about it. And also the Raiders, I don't know, truthfully. I didn't ask in my discussions if the Raiders were even a possibility that they got voted down.
It was.
Okay,
It was not.
that's fine, I didn't know.
Well, I asked that
Okay,
question.
thank you. Good, okay. But with Commissioner Stanley coming in here like she did tonight, and also she's getting the same kind of feedback, she's getting the same kind of comments, and we continue to say that we're wanting to create better relations throughout our communities, or better relations through our boards, between our board and our county commission. And the county commissioner that's the chairman of the education committee, is asking us just to allow the community to say if they want that middle school name or not. I think she brings up some valid points. I'd really like to know the grand total, because to change the name away from Sullivan South will be expensive. Several of the things of that community has been decided over the last 3 years because they knew it was going to a middle school, and most people thought that it was going to be Sullivan South Middle School. They bought a scoreboard at the soccer field that says Sullivan South instead of Sullivan South High School. It says Sullivan South Soccer, because they knew that there was going to be a change. They just bought all new basketball seats for the gym that say Sullivan South, but not Sullivan South High School, because they knew there was going to be a change. So a lot of things that people took for granted didn't happen. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that my community is asking me to ask you to please allow that name to be added to a survey, just so that they can actually be heard. I'm not trying to get you guys to vote my way to change a name that's been coming from a committee. I would not do that. I really don't think that would be the right thing to do. But I am asking, and from the community begging, to be allowed to have that name added and the Raiders' names added, because I'll let Mr. Robinson speak if he chooses to, but the North Zone is asking for the same thing. They want to keep part of their identity. So that's really the end of my thing. I would just very much appreciate if you would allow us to run the survey again with Sullivan South Middle School and the Raiders.
Any other board members?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on that. Can you hear me? Does this work?
Kind of.
I've heard from a few from the North Zone, and they're getting left out again. That's how they feel. I mean, we've been through this. I think everybody received the email today from one of the teachers in the North Zone that put it directly in perspective of what has happened to the North Zone. They get left out. There's nothing in this name for the North community, and I get we had kids from over there and parents and teachers, but I was also talked to one that was in the committee and was told that there was one that pushed to get rid of the South name and the Raiders name, but I don't think she was part of this either community. Okay, to me, if you're going to have a committee, you need to know their background. If they've been through this North Zone, if they've lived in these communities, to me, if South should get to keep South. I've said that from day one. I know when I first got on the board, I mentioned renaming the mascots, redoing the mascots. Why? Because North Zone was never supposed to be a rebel. Okay, they were supposed to be Raiders. For Central, they should stay the Cougars like they're going to, because Blountville and Holston was always going to be Cougars. But why make the South community suffer when they have so much support out there? And it's like Mr. Iverson said, their community supports that school so much, and you see South all over. Who's seriously going to pay to rename all that? Who's going to go in and change all that? Okay, and then next year when we open up, we all know there's no way we're going to have it renamed by the time it opens in August. So if we name this school Sullivan Heights, kids is going to be going to Sullivan South is what it's going to say on their signs, but they're actually going to be Sullivan Heights. I'm with Iverson. I would like to do another survey with Sullivan Heights Huskies, and then also give them the option of Sullivan South Middle, Raiders or Blue Raiders. What would it hurt? What would another month hurt? To hear from our communities and see what they want. Because North and South both have alumni. They do, and they're strong. Let them speak. I mean, I talked to several people that they didn't even vote on this because they wasn't pleased with any of the names. And several said that they felt that the Huskies and the Wolfpack was a way of trying to make our communities buy into Westridge. I mean, that's just how they feel.
Any other board members?
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments. I don't think, since I've been on the board, I've had as much discussion or been as torn about any issue as I have this issue, and I've looked into it in depth. I really sympathize with our two board members, two sitting board members on this issue. And personally, I like the Sullivan South name. But last night I made a long phone call to Evelyn and went through the process in detail. I got the names of the people who participated, some very hardcore South and North outspoken people participated. I found out that the process was also protected in that people couldn't vote repeatedly. That issue had been addressed. And I've had several people say that, you know, the process is important. And I don't know that I disagree with that, but what I would say is the people in the process are important. To begin with, I worked with Evelyn for 4 years. I know whatever process she had in place and whatever she conducted was done in a very honest and upfront way, and have 100% confidence in whatever process she oversaw. And then having heard the way the votes went and how the name was taken down, and some of the people who were big supporters of the North community and the South community, I felt like the process had been vetted fairly well. I wished, and when the schools were named in the East Zone, to be honest, I was not, Sullivan East Middle School was not my first choice. But I wanted the school so badly that I bit my lip, and I like it now, but if I had been choosing at the time, I actually voted for something else. I started to raise the same question these board members are raising, and decided not to because I wanted the school worse than I did my own personal way. And but it was tough. But at the same time, I really wish that we didn't have two sitting board members that weren't happy or weren't satisfied, or anybody in the community that wasn't satisfied. But I do have total, complete confidence in the people who ran this survey. And, you know, of course, seeing the children come here and hearing what they have to say kind of makes the process a little more legit to me, too. But I just wanted to make the point that I don't live in the South Zone, but I have been very torn and concerned to the point where I made lots of phone calls, lots of inquiry, picked a lot of brains about the process. And after talking to Evelyn last night and seeing how it actually worked, I felt better about it. So I certainly understand, and I thought Ms. Stanley made some very valid points. I think Mark and Paul make some very valid points. But at the end of the day, you know, you're not going to make everyone happy with any name. And I don't know how we could have had the process done any differently. If I'd have been on that committee, I'd have been somebody advocating for Sullivan South Middle School. Maybe it would have got taken down, and I'd have still wanted it. But I just wanted to express that I had really took an interest in this and looked at it quite closely, because I really, 2 weeks ago, I fully intended on coming here and trying to get an addition to the vote, having the name added. But I can't say that I found any flaws in what I heard last night, even though I called looking for them.
I'm a firm believer in process. We have board policies. Policies give us procedures to follow, and this process has been followed.
Chairman Jones, is his volume up? It is. Is it on? I mean, even I have trouble.
Let's try this.
I don't think it's on. There you go.
How about now?
No, tap on it. It's not on.
You want to use mine?
Am I good?
There you go. Thank you.
I knew my volume couldn't be that low, because I get fussed at a lot of times for talking too loud. But I'm a firm believer in process. We have board policies to follow. The policies also have procedures that go with them, and this is the 4th time we have followed this process to name a school. You can't make everyone happy, and, I haven't gotten my choice on lots of these names as we voted for them, but I accepted the votes as they went through, and I did vote for Central Cougars, but that was it. The others I did not get my choice on. And I think we have to honor the process. If we don't, then we're saying to the committee, thanks for your hard work, but since we don't like it, we're going to send it back and see if we can get a different answer. That's the way I feel about it. But each one of us will have a vote, and the first thing we'll be voting on is whether or not to table this, and if it's voted to table, I'll be fine with it. That's a choice that we as a 7-member board will make. I wish we had unanimous votes on everything like we did naming the Central Cougars just a few minutes ago, but that doesn't happen very often, and that is unfortunate. But any other board members have comments?
One final comment, and I'll leave it alone after that, but I agree the process is important. I really do. I also agree that community is important. And I'm not saying that we're totally just disregarding the community. I'm really not, because the community was involved in the naming committee. So I'm not trying to say that what we did was wrong or that our process was flawed or anything else. I'm really not. I just know that the change is going to be expensive. The community and, like I say, the chairman of the education committee, which sponsors most of our things through the county commission, has asked us to do this. And there's no rush. We don't have to have this done tonight. And sitting back saying that we can possibly save money, make people feel like they're included. I mean, inclusiveness is a really good thing. And I can't sit here and say I guarantee I will, but because I'm maybe some sort of violation, but if you include that name and it comes back and loses, I'm fine with that. I truly am. And I didn't even vote in any of these surveys because they didn't really involve me. And the Sullivan Central people really were able to keep everything. I feel like that Mr. Robinson and I are the only ones that are living in the communities that are going to be affected by this. And we're the only ones asking you guys to please allow our communities to have a voice that they've asked us to come forward and say. And I thank you very much.
Any other comments? This time, we are voting on the motion to table. Ms. King?
Mr. Iverson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Ralph?
No.
Mr. Spivey?
No.
Mr. Gilmore?
No.
Mr. Hughes?
No.
Motion to table fails 5-2. We now have the original motion back, which is to name it Sullivan Heights Middle School with the Huskies. Any discussion on that?
I do. I want to say something, and I almost said it on the motion to table, and I think everybody has good points, and I feel for Mr. Iverson and Mr. Robinson and the people that are disappointed. But somebody is always going to be disappointed. And one thing I really think that should be stated, since this is public education, while it is relevant what businesses might support a school, that's relevant. But if we're making decisions in public education and people are going to leave a school because a name has changed, then we have a lot bigger problems in our community than the name of a school. So I would certainly hope that anybody that is disappointed will remember that, and this is why I love public education. It doesn't matter how much money you have. And this is why I struggle with the COVID issues, because the impact of it does matter, and it does fall on the people that really need public education. But we certainly should not be naming a school because we're worried about a business supporter. If they won't support a school that's in their community because the name has changed, then I think they need to look deeper in their heart and how they feel about their community.
Any other comments? Ms. King, we're ready for roll call on the motion to name Sullivan Heights Middle School with the Huskies.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Iverson?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
Dr. Ralph?
Yes.
Mr. Spivey?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2. The new name is Sullivan Heights Middle School. This time, we'll move back up to where we left off with communications to the board. Dr. Cox.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Jones. So under communications to the board, at the work session, I did share a recommendation that I am making this evening, and that's to add a soccer program for our students who attend Colonial Heights and Sullivan Gardens. We had someone come to the board to speak about that during public comment a few times ago. We have researched that, and in order to offer a soccer program in the spring, it is the recommendation of TSSAA to offer that as a co-ed program. Again, we do plan to have boys and girls soccer programs at all three of our middle schools beginning in the fall of this coming school year. So this would be just for this spring in order to fulfill community interest in this program. It would be an expenditure of $800 for a coaching stipend. So I respectfully request this evening that the board would consider adding a soccer program, a co-ed soccer program for students in Colonial Heights and Sullivan Gardens for spring sports.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Cox. Do I have a motion?
I'll make, Or second, either one. Mr. Arson, please.
Mr. Iverson made the motion, Mr. Spivey seconds it. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, and Mr. Arson asked these questions, and they were good points at our work session, but people that didn't watch that, the goal, if I understand it correctly, would be, there would be, that way, ultimately, next year, there would be a boys and girls soccer at every middle school.
That's correct.
And the reason that we're doing it co-ed this year is to comply with Title IX in the
That's
law.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Ms. King?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Rouse?
Yes.
Mr. Spivey?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Iverson?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all. Next, under Director's comments, I'd like to take this opportunity to make a special recognition for our school nurses. And so we had planned to do this prior to Governor Lee's Executive Order 71 that limited our participation to 10 or fewer people in our meeting, but we're going to do this virtually tonight. And so what I'd like to do is call the names of each of our school nurses and tell you where they serve. And then I have a picture, or I have a certificate here, and I'll hold it so that the folks watching us remotely can see. And this is the certificate, and I'll just read it once and then let you know who it is. So Certificate of Appreciation is presented proudly to, in this case, it's Diane Kopus, who is our nursing coordinator, in appreciation for your hard work and commitment to the staff and students of Sullivan County Public Schools during the COVID-19 pandemic. And if I may just say, our school nurses are on the front line. They have worked so hard. And as you know, you've heard me say many times, we have weekly calls with our health department, with the school systems in Sullivan County and the cities of Bristol and Kingsport. And I can't think of a time that we've convened, but what Dr. May and Mr. Mays have been so complimentary of our school nurses because of the work that they do. They have been so dedicated, and I don't know what we would have been able to do without them. In addition to looking after people and talking to parents and helping everybody understand what's going on, they've given so selflessly of themselves. And this is just a very small token of our appreciation, and it is right and appropriate to give them a little bit of recognition. So if you'll bear with me, I'd just like to call their names because they're very, very special people. As I said, Diane Kopus is our nursing coordinator, and she is responsible for all of the information that is compiled that I share with you, the numbers of folks in quarantine, in isolation, and keeping track of all that. But she gets that information from the school nurses in each of the schools. So that's Diane Kopus. Shannon Smith is our coordinated school health program coordinator. She also works out of our central office. And then moving to the schools at Sullivan Gardens, we have Taylor Arnold. At Emmett Elementary School, Teresa Ball. At South High School, Shantae Barger. At Kettering, we have Melissa Caldwell. At Blountville Elementary, Chrissy Duncan. At Holston Middle, Kari Farron. At Sullivan East Middle School, Ashley Ham. At Sullivan Central High School, Madison Hart. At Bluff City Elementary School, Shanoa Hewitt. At Central Heights Elementary, Libby Houchins. At Sullivan North High School, Kathy or Renee Johnson. At Mary Hughes Elementary, Alice Jones. At Holston Elementary, Bambi Crouch. At Rock Springs Elementary, Angela McLean. At Blountville Middle School, Kimberly Mead. At Indian Springs Elementary, Kim Moody. At Sullivan North Middle School, Sarah Murdoch. Miller Perry Elementary, Cynthia Robbins. Sullivan East High School, Kimberly, also known as Nikki Walters. And finally, at Colonial Heights Middle School, Kathy Worley. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in expressing our appreciation for our school nurses? And so we do have a certificate for each one of the nurses that has been signed by Mr. Jones and by me, and we'll make sure that we get those out. And so a big thanks to all the school nurses, and I hope that you're watching this evening. Last time at the work session, we did talk a little bit about the two other issues, but I would make one just very brief comment about inclement weather decisions, since we have some forecasted bad weather tonight. Just to clarify, if we, while we're online and we do have a need for a schedule change, such as a delay or a closure, we will announce that. If we announce a closure, there would be no instruction either for the virtual learning academy students or for students that are online who have selected the in-person learning. If we're on a delay, a 2-hour delay, then the schedules for both programs would begin 2 hours later than usual. So that concludes the director's comments for this evening. Would you like to just jump back down to under new business, Mr. Jones?
New business
Okay,
C.
so if we will just follow the agenda, under new business, we took care of item A. I'd like to move now to item 6B, and that is relocating Blountville Elementary to Holston Elementary. We discussed this in the work session, and we talked about much of the information, but at your places, you do have this sheet that is yellow. Mrs. Deloach did update the numbers on that sheet to bring it current, and so as you look at that, you have several years' worth of expenditures, and you can see for the current school year at the very bottom, that is, those are the figures to date from the actual budget. You can see then the expenditures for operating the campus was $228,106. Then you can see the rest, and it's how that works. Just wanted you to have that updated information. And so, again, I would just, for the board's information, would like to formally recommend to you this evening that the board consider to close the Blountville campus, which would, the middle school part is closing anyway, because the students who are in the middle school program would be coming here to Sullivan Central Middle School next year, along with those in Holston. Then the students that are a part of the elementary program would not attend that campus, but most of them would also go to Holston, as we visited, with some of the students potentially attending at Central Heights. I am asking not for a decision on district boundaries this evening. That's something I would bring as a recommendation later, but the recommendation this evening is to close Blountville Elementary School.
So you've heard the recommendation from Dr. Cox to close Blountville Elementary School with rezoning of those students either to Holston Elementary or Central Heights. Those would be the two schools that they would be rezoned to. So I will entertain a motion then to close Blountville Elementary with the rezoning to Holston and Central Heights.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion and reserve maybe some comments if we get a second. But to close and to rezone as necessary.
Yes. So clarification, to close Blountville Elementary School and rezone as necessary would be the motion made by Mr. Hughes. I need a second. I will second that motion. The floor is open for discussion.
I would just remind everyone that back when we did the Richter study, that there were some, you saw the expenses here associated with the school, but there's also that assumption that when you close square footage that you save a certain amount of money. And the number they threw out then was $15.50. Now, you can debate that, but it's something. And between those two campuses, there's 127,941 square feet. But if that $15.50 held up, that would be about $1.9 million a year in savings for the, not to maintain and keep that square footage open. That does not include the cost of duplicated employment and so forth. And I would remind everyone that we have improved our situation remarkably, and that the motives for that are to better serve the students and to better pay our people. We're on the verge, and I expect by next year to take a big step toward doing just that as far as closing the gap between what we pay and some of the surrounding systems. And these decisions, while they're hard, there's a benefit, and there's a reason, and it's worth the pain. No one wants to close a facility. This facility is old. It's hard to heat. Not worth it. The number to renovate it would be remarkably high. So when you make these tough decisions, keep in mind what our purpose in doing it is directed at. We know, I think, and Mr. Jones can correct me, I'm going from memory on these things, but to bring ourselves up to the regional average, it was about 5.4 million, give or take, and we'd have to add to our budget to meet the regional average to pay our people. This gives us more to work with. Working with the budget the way I have over the last 3 or 4 years, I know about what we have to work with. This would be extremely helpful in what we're about to do. And I think it would also benefit our students in the long run. If you've been to the Holston campus, you know how nice it is. I think most everyone's been there by now. I brought with me tonight the Dijon Richter and the PIVA study. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Is it PIVA? PIVA? That if you had other questions, I could probably dig and get the information. The square footage on the elementary school is 63,711. They attribute 9.9 acres to that. The middle school is 64,230, and they attribute 20 acres to that. So you're talking about 29 acres and 127,941 square feet. And that gives you some idea of the size of that facility and the cost associated with it. And again, I don't have the answers it's been a long time since I've looked at this study, but I do have it here tonight. If there's anything else that we needed to dig and look at, we could probably do that.
Dr. Rouse?
I would just like to say to the faculty, staff, students, parents, and community of Blountville, these decisions are never easy. They're always hard. And any time that you close a school in a community, it does impact the community. We all can attest to that. But again, we as board members are taxed with the responsibility of doing what we feel is best for the entire student population in Sullivan County. So please know that we have spent a lot of time in some cases prayer. And these kinds of decisions are not easy. In fact, most of the decisions that we make are not easy, but these are some of the hardest ones that we have to make.
Mr. Iverson?
When I spoke during the work session, I feel like nobody likes closing schools. I definitely don't like closing schools. My area's being impacted by it right now, and Mr. Robinson's area's been impacted so much, I don't know how they're able to stand it. They've lost a lot. Over the last few years, we've known that Sullivan South was closing as a high school, and we knew Colonial Heights Middle was closing and Sullivan Middle was closing, and we had time to prepare, we had time to plan, we had time to do things. I don't like the fact that we're coming along and telling Blountville that didn't know anything about it until very recently that we're going to be closing your school also. I don't like the speed. I'm not arguing against that it needs to be done. I'm just saying that the speed is I guess my problem with it, is that we're going to say we're right in the middle of a pandemic and everybody's talking about that, and we've talked about, one of our speakers tonight talking about the psychology and how people are already in trauma about, all of the things that are going on with their lives right now. And I just hate to see us add one more thing to that by saying, oh, by the way, your school's closing and you're going to have to go somewhere else. And we don't know where yet. You may be going to this school or that school, but I just don't like the way that we're doing it so fast. I truthfully wouldn't be even opposed to it if we would make it for the 2022-2023 year, just because it allows them time to cope. It allows the counselors time to talk. It allows the community time to digest it. I just don't like the speed. And I've been asked, I'm sure that all of you are like me. You're getting so many emails about lots of different things. I mean, from school naming to Blountville closing to COVID, we're getting a lot of emails. And I know that all of us try our best to go through all of them. I think we all try our best to answer when we can. Sometimes it's hard to answer. Sometimes we can't answer, and we just don't know. But I had 3 people over the last 2 days ask me if we saw the letter from the teachers and the staff, and I'm sure that, I'm saying, I believe that we all have, I hope that we all have, but they were upset that nothing was even mentioned about the letter, that we didn't say anything about the letter in the work session. They were really hoping that we would acknowledge the letter, and I was asked by 2 specific people to read the letter, and it won't take long. I went through the whole thing, and with your indulgence, Mr. Jones, I'd like to read that.
Go right ahead.
Read it. I've read it.
I read it too.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to, and has everyone read it? Because I mean,
It
I
was
don't.
2 or 3 weeks ago, wasn't it?
The 16th of December, yes.
Is that the one with the signatures?
Yes, 29 people. Okay. I just want to at least acknowledge the fact that we all did receive it, and if we're all okay with saying that we read the letter, then I'm okay with that, not having to read it. But I didn't want them to feel like they were unappreciated or underappreciated, and since they specifically asked me to read it, unless everyone's telling me that they have and they'll nod my way, I'm fine with that. But if that's okay, then I'll just skip it. So.
And I will add to that, Mr. Iverson, I actually printed it off.
Okay.
And made notes in the columns based on some of the things that they asked for.
Okay.
Some of the things such as, please keep us intact if you move us to Holston. And I made notes in the margins such as, that's not practical because we'd have to retrofit one side or the other of Holston if you're going to make, because there's such federal guidelines to pre-K and kindergarten restrictions and mandates that you couldn't do that. You'd have to retrofit both sides of the school. Okay. And so I actually made notes in the columns, okay, arguments, I guess, if you will, in some of the things that they said. But I felt like it would be just another slap if I sent back a response to say, well, we can't do this and this is why, and we can't do this and this is why. I just let it roll down because I felt like that was the kindest thing to do at that moment.
And that's exactly what I was saying when I say that sometimes we can't answer.
Yeah.
Because, we
That
get
hit
these.
it
Yeah, I
from
mean,
you.
it's just sometimes it's very difficult to answer, but I did want to at least acknowledge the fact that
Yes.
they did send a letter, they put a lot of thought and effort into it, there's a lot of great points in that letter, and I thank them for taking the time to do that. I guess the only thing that I will do this just because I feel led to do it. I would like to make a motion to amend the closure from the 2021-2022 school year to amend it to the 2022-2023 school year, delaying it by 1 year to allow all of that community to accept it and to understand it and to ask the questions and have the meetings that I feel like they probably need to have. And one of the comments that they made, which was pretty significant, is that we'll be closing 8 schools if we do them. It'll be 7 schools without them this summer. And how will we be able to do that? How will our group be able to do that, get everything out of it? So, and I just, again, it's not my school, it's not my area, it's not my zone. I feel bad for them, but I also feel led to say, okay, fine, I understand what you're asking. I thank you for taking the time to fight for your school and your kids and your community, and that's why I'm making the motion. So, and I guess I should have gotten a second before I went through that whole speech. I apologize. So.
Okay, Mr. Iverson has made the motion to change the closing date of Blountville to the end of the 21-22 school year, I believe is the correct way of doing it. Is that right?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Robinson. Floor is open for discussion on the motion to amend. In response to one question that you had, Mr. Iverson, about the moving, the one way of dealing with the movement, which I would recommend that we would hire individuals that would be just solely dedicated to moving the Blountville Elementary School into Holston. There'd be no other commitment that they would have, because there are some things that need to be done at Holston, such as painting. That would be a really great idea to have it ready coming into a new school. But that one has been looked at, and there's ways of doing that where that's a separate process from the other schools. So that one would kind of separate those two. Any other discussions?
And I'll add, Chairman Jones, if I might, there won't be as much moving from Blountville. We won't have to move furniture because there's going to already be furniture at Holston, so that'll be a huge relief. And I didn't realize that till I was, again, thinking through some of those things in the margin, because
The size of desks, I wasn't sure if it would or not.
because they've already got an elementary there, and then
Right
they're going to
there.
separate, so, but that got my attention, and I was thinking through that, but then I realized, they won't have to move the furniture as much, just the teachers' belongings and those kinds of things.
I mean, it's.
So it helps a little bit to know that. Doesn't help the,
They'd still have to move the tables and chairs though, correct? Because they're smaller for the elementary. The middle school's what's moving out of Holston, correct? So we still have to move the tables and chairs from Blountville to Holston?
we'll have the elementary side of Holston.
Yeah, but Holston's already got kids in their elementary on that side. So we're bringing more kids from Blountville. Won't we have to bring their tables and enough stuff for them kids?
I think that there'll still be enough, but maybe so, Mr. Robinson, you might be accurate on that.
It depends somewhat on how much furniture is left here in this building also, as to how much will be moved out. But the way of dealing with it, again, is to hire individuals, not necessarily a company, but a moving crew that would be just dedicated to making the move from Blountville over to Holston, and they wouldn't be tied up with anything else. It wouldn't require maintenance people or anything of that nature. So, but that you're right, they may have to move
Yes.
some of those desks. But the arrangement probably would be to have K3 on one side and 4 or 5 on the other side, or K2, whichever number it would be. But, pardon?
Would you like me to speak to that a little bit?
Yes.
I think what we would have to do is just inventory what's here and what's usable. There would be some need to move things, but the other thing that I would say is, if we have an elementary population on that campus next year, we're going to have to do a lot of moving within the campus, because if you'll recall from our tour, The recommendation would be to move the elementary kids into the middle school portion of that building. So you're going to have to essentially move twice, once each year.
Any other points of discussion?
The next thing is, I guess the short notice, I'm kind of with Iverson on this. I get what everybody's saying, that we've gave them a month, but it also, we're in a pandemic. I remember at North, back when we thought we was getting an option over there, we had the meeting at North, where the community could come in and speak to us. Why can we not give them time so that hopefully this can pass and we can actually get the community of Blountville and go to Blountville and let them come and talk to us? And why do we not give them that option? We didn't have many people here speaking tonight, and my thoughts on that is because of COVID. I mean, we can't have more than 10 people in here, so how could they come and fight for their school? Right now, we're trying to do this during a pandemic. We're shutting them out. They can send emails, but you all know as much as I do, when you look at somebody face-to-face and they speak to you, it means a lot more than an email. I personally think that's just how I am. I've seen at North, I mean, you all went there, well, I don't remember how many was on the board then, but the board came there and we got to speak. We filled the North, and South people even came over, and we got to fight for it. We need to give them that option. And I guess I don't like the fact, too, that we done this to Blountville again at Christmas. What was it, a year or two? We talked about closing the middle school right at Christmas and giving these teachers and these parents and these students something to worry about over Christmas break when they're supposed to be spending time with their families and enjoying it. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's 2 years in a row we've done them. It may have been 2 years ago we done that to them. But it's not right. I don't like the thoughts of closing schools because I see exactly what it does to the community in my area. The Bloomingdale has completely changed. We got the email earlier. It told all the schools that closed in the zone, and this will affect all of Blountville. You say it's all about money. I get that. I understand that. Got to save money. But at some point, to me, it's got to be about the kids in these communities and knowing they got support.
If there's no other comments, we will have a vote on the motion to amend the closing date to the original recommendation to close this year. So the amended motion is that we would close Blountville Elementary School at the end of the school year 21-22. Ms. King, roll call, please.
Dr. Rouse,
No.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
No.
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
No.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Motion to change the closing date to the end of the 21-22 school year is passed 4-3, so the official closing date then will be the end of next school year.
We have to vote on the motion, right?
Pardon?
We just voted on the amendment. We'll have to vote on the motion, won't we?
No.
Okay, we're good. All right, that's fine.
You voted on the amended motion, and since it passed,
Okay.
that nullifies the original motion.
Okay, thank you.
Am I not correct, Mr. Hull?
I think that
Okay,
works.
Yeah. Because the original motion was to close at the end of this school year,
right,
but you just got through closing it
okay.
at the end of the school year.
I'm good. I just didn't want to, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Read the next item.
Next item?
Okay, the next item is consideration of policies for review on first reading. And again, that's items C, A through F. These are policies that were reviewed by the policy committee largely based on the recommendation of TSBA Policy Service, as we're a subscriber of those services, as they reviewed the policies and made recommendation. There is no action required for first reading. We did have some comment that we will take back to the policy committee from the work session. Moving on to unfinished business on the agenda, we present to you policies that are for second reading, and these were first presented at the last meeting, and so we ask for your approval for policies A through G on second reading.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Cox to approve A through G on second reading, and you will note that we pulled the one policy where we had a question about classified, I believe, last week. So that one's been pulled off. So I entertain a motion then to approve these A through G.
So moved.
Mr. Gilmore makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Spivey. Any questions, comments? Roll call, Ms. King.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Rouse.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We did talk at the work session about the operating schedule update. I don't have any recommendations at this time for any changes, just we are on schedule now to be remote with students returning to in-person instruction is our aspiration on the 19th of this month. Should we have additional information that would, where I believe we need to make a schedule change, we would potentially ask for a special call meeting, Mr. Jones. Okay. The next item, we discussed at the work session, the proposed lease of the Sullivan East Middle property, and Mr. Hull gave you an update on that. Mr. Hull, do you have any additional information to share with the board on that?
I don't. I do have a form now, and we've gone to work on it. So
Okay.
we'll bring that to the next board meeting.
Okay. Moving on then to item D. Last month, we shared a proposal from ESS for the management of our substitute teachers. We, since that time, when the board voted to increase the substitute teacher pay temporarily for the balance of this year, we did share that information. Mrs. Deloach has been in touch with them, and they have made that amendment. So we do recommend for your approval this evening that we would enter into a relationship with ESS to manage our substitute teachers.
You've heard the recommendation from Dr. Cox to enter into a contractual agreement with ESS Substitute Program. Do I have a motion? Dr. Rouse makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Iverson makes the second. Any discussion? Roll call, Ms. King.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Rouse,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is public-private partnership option for West Ridge Access Road. We discussed this at length last, Tuesday night, I guess, for probably an hour or so. And I asked you to go home and think about it and come back with any recommendations that you might have, or any motions or anything of that nature. I think we left here with some established facts, and that is that we've got a high school going to open in August 2021. That's a fact, assuming that there's no problems that we encounter between now and then, and that we're going to open it either with the road as it is now, or with the road as it will be after some changes are made by the road commissioner, which will be widening the shoulders of it, or as it will be by going into a partnership with Jericho Partners LLC and having them build an access road. Those were the three options that we discussed and left it that night with you to think about. So at this time, I will entertain any motions or comments from board members if there are any. I know Dr. Cost said that he did not have any recommendation on this, so that's why it's back with us as a board, because this is a board decision.
Mr. Chairman, I have a recommendation.
Okay.
For consideration. I'd like to present a resolution to authorize the Sullivan County Board of Education to enter into a public-private partnership with Jericho Partners LLC to develop and purchase a private access road to West Ridge High School, and to request for the Sullivan County Board of Commissioners to issue rural bonds not to exceed $6 million to complete the purchase. The final amount not to exceed $6 million will be determined at the completion and acceptance of the access road. I have copies that I could hand out if it's appropriate.
Okay.
And
That's okay. I'm not going to vote.
you're going to have to see.
That's not bad.
Mr. Cox, Dr. Cox had an extra one.
Oh, okay. He said he's got extra ones, so thank you. I was going to let him take a picture.
Okay. I needed to stand up anyway.
So that's the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you have heard a motion from Mr. Hughes to pass a resolution to authorize the Sullivan County Board of Education to enter into a public-private partnership with Jericho Partners LLC to develop and purchase the private access road to West Ridge High School, and to request the county commission to issue rural school bonds not to exceed $6 million to complete this purchase. The final amount not to exceed $6 million will be determined at the completion and acceptance of the access road. Do I have a second on that before we get into the discussion?
I second it.
Dr. Rouse seconds that motion, so the floor is open for discussion. Mr. Iverson.
I mean, you're first if you'd like to talk.
I'd just like to follow that by saying that I'm sure that everyone here has an opinion about whether it's our responsibility or someone else's to fund this. But however you feel about that, it is our responsibility to take into account the safety of the students, and the clock's ticking. In a few months, we will be having high school over there, and I don't think the option to do nothing exists. I think it's incumbent upon us to do everything we can to say we've made every effort to get something done. That will make a good access for that high school. It will add to what's already going to be an unbelievable facility. I think this is something that can work, and I hope everyone will give it consideration, because when we open the middle school, we put 648 or 49 students there, and took a day or two to adjust the traffic, and we're about to have 1,700, 1,800, maybe even 19 at the high school. So we can't have enough accesses, and any improvements they do on that road will be nice and be good. Even if we have another access road on the end of the property, we're always going to need that access, and there's no better time, no better time to borrow money than now if we need to. So I would say the time now is to act, and we really have a sense of I have a sense of urgency about this.
I think the safety of our kids demand that we do something. Like Mr. Hughes said, we can argue over who should be doing it, but we are responsible for the education of our students. We are responsible for the facilities, and their safety is of utmost importance to getting them to school and to making it a good place for them to learn. I don't like the idea of having to use general purpose money to pay for this. Sales tax money revenue is what we would have to use, or some of our fund balance. But it's needed, and I think if it gets done, this Board of Education is going to have to be the one that steps up and says, we're going to do it. Now, before it goes any further, it would have to go to the county commission to ask them to approve it, and they would have to issue the bond, and it's a rural debt bond because that means the city part would not get any benefit of that, the City Boards of Education, and it will be paid back by the school board through a period of time to be determined by whatever the length the bonds were sold at, and I don't think it specifies here. But the floor is still open for other comments and discussion.
Which of our prior bonds that were issued before any of us on the board are about to roll off?
We don't have anything that rolls off, I don't think, until about 2024.
Okay.
And I believe 2024 is one of them. We've got the Kettering project rolls off somewhere in the mid to late 20s, I believe, and it was $15 million. And the ESG grant money was, I think, $24.2 million, and it rolls off. We do have East High School that we put a new roof on about 2 years ago. We've had a bond, or a loan anyway, for $1.5 million. I think we still owe about $800,000 on it. And there is some possibility that we could do some refinancing there to help use part of that to pay on this and put the two together. And we had one that rolled off, I think, in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, one of the grants. But it's unusual for a school system to have to pay debt service out of tax money. Usually it's paid by the governing body. But we've been doing it since at least 2000, because I've gone back and read the minutes of county commission meetings, and we have paid more than $59 million, I believe, in the last 20 years to pay back for remodeling of schools, for heating of schools, and things of that nature. And my thinking is, if this year gets done, we're going to have to step up and do something.
That's what I'm struggling with, and I appreciate the drafting of the resolution, Mr. Hughes. And this is not to cause, conflict or point fingers, but if people want to know why we're having to talk about these buildings and these schools and we're so far behind in pay, it's because the county commission is our funding body. What Mr. Jones refers to in sales tax, and this is pretty complex even for a lawyer, a lot of lawyers don't understand it. It's taken me years to try to, but we're talking about pledging state mandated dollars that should be educating our children to build a road that our county commission and our highway department have known was needed when they issued the bonds 4.5 years ago. So if people want to know why we have to have hard discussions about teacher pay or why communities feel like they're falling by the wayside, then I'd be glad to talk to them, but they may want to talk to their county commissioners. They may want to talk to the highway commissioner, because I do want to remind everybody of one thing, and I know everyone sitting here knows this, and we talked about it at the work session, but the saddest part about all of this is when the bonds were issued by our county commission over 4 years ago, they knew the location of Westridge High School. They approved it. Thereafter, Mr. Belgeri, in his role as highway commissioner, even ultimately offered to spend money that was in his reserve fund. That would have meant no more taxes for anybody else in our community. It was already there. It was rejected by the county commission. And here we sit today, after we had a new highway department commissioner go on the news and tell everybody that this was his highest priority. was building this road. And this is not meant to pick a fight, but if we don't talk about it in public and acknowledge it, then we see why this happens to our county school system for at least, as Mr. Jones said, 20 years, because it's the only way that our county school system can get anything done. Because each single year, we are fighting